And so we're bringing on our first guest, Mr. Jeffrey Blount. And he has a new book, but also the paperback edition will be coming out next week. So we want to make sure that if you didn't get the hardcover, that you get the paperback. And he's going to tell you what the title of his book is. So welcome to Black Authors Matter TV.
Thank you, Gwen. Thank you, Dr. Lawson. Nice to see you both.
Nice seeing you as
And,
well.
And Happy New
yeah,
Year.
Happy New Year to you too. And I
Yeah.
thank you for the opportunity to come on and talk about Mr. Jimmy from Around the Way. It does come out in paperback
Okay.
very soon, and you can pre-order it anytime you want. Um, Mr. Jimmy is about an African American billionaire, James Henry Ferguson, who is well known and well loved because he's a philanthropist and he loves helping people, using his money to make a difference in the lives of people. But he suffers a pretty public and shocking fall from grace. He grew up in the rural South and he decides to run to the rural South again to try and hide from social media and traditional media, buys a house sight unseen, gets to the house and realizes that he has bought this house on the edge of a neighborhood that's mired in total abject poverty.
Mm.
And he doesn't really want to have anything to do with the neighborhood because he's got his own problems, but he gets drawn in. And then the book follows his attempt to find some sort of redemption while he is at the same time trying to save his new community from collapsing.
Now, is this based on any true events or close to true events, or is this just Jeffrey Blunt's imagination?
It's my imagination. It's something. It's a carryover from my time in the news business and witnessing and seeing, and also, I mean, I grew up in the rural South, so witnessing the kind of poverty that can exist and the kind of issues that I want to take on in my writing. I like to think of myself as a literary activist, so this gives me the opportunity when I build this community to show readers about the kind of issues we have in these communities, the lack of health care, lack of education, lack of proper housing, on and on and on. And so I wanted to tackle these issues. And one way to do that was to get this brilliant black billionaire into this space to see it through his eyes and a person with a philanthropic heart to see what that would turn into in this kind of community.
I like that because I think right now people don't like to be preached to per se. So many people maybe will shy away from a nonfiction book or a self-help book, so to speak, but they will ingest those same truths and digest those same truths through fiction. So you're making a wonderful commentary on society and life, but doing it in a fictional way. And so people will be able to receive that message that you're passing on.
Well, I believe in the power of the written word, and um, we can go all the way back to The Jungle by Upton Sinclair. The man sat in a room by himself and wrote a book, and that book changed the legislative direction of a nation. And we think of
Mm,
Toni Morrison, we think of Beloved, which changed the whole attitude we have about the benevolent South, as it were. And she taught us to see that in a different way. She changed how we viewed a part of our history. So this is the power of literature, the power of fiction, the power of stories. We know that fiction creates empathy in people.
yes,
And so when you use this vehicle, fiction, to create this kind of empathy, to create these situations, and put readers in that space. And I really feel like reading fiction in a really good story is the closest we can get to being in somebody else's shoes. And so if you're
absolutely.
in that space and you're in those shoes and you're feeling all of these things that are happening in the book, then you are affected by it. And I think that I can make a difference by putting people in that space and making them feel the power of that life in that community that I've created.
Yeah, fiction is very good for conversations, and that's what happens in book club meetings when
Yes.
I'm in two book clubs, and when we discuss a book, the books that we like the best are the ones that really elicit a lot of comments, feedback, um, just picking apart the characters, thinking about how the story could have gone in a different direction,
Mhm.
just all kinds of things, and relating it to current events. If it's especially with contemporary fiction, a lot of it we
Absolutely.
can relate to current events. Um, and sometimes fiction is the best way to present a new concept or something that's not widely known. I know my
Right.
first novel, which is called The Genesis Files, features the Limba tribe, which is an actual African tribe that can trace its lineage back to Aaron in the Bible through their DNA. They have
Wow.
more Jewish DNA markers than the European Jews that we see today. And so when I first heard about them, I wanted to write a book, but because I didn't hear anymore. It was like I saw an article and then that was it. And I didn't think a nonfiction book would sell. So I wrote a novel, which is a mystery, and I wove them into the story. And in my author's note, I said, this is a real tribe. And I get so many emails. That book came out 10 years ago, but I get so many emails from people who say that my book led them to research the Limba tribe. They never heard of them. And so fiction is a good way to bring concepts out, ideas, a different way of looking at things, um, taking historical events and putting a different spin on it. It's
Yeah.
all kinds of
Yeah.
things you can do with. You can take a lot of liberties with fiction. So
Right.
now we actually heard about your book through the gentleman who did your audiobook, Earl Sewell. He was on
Yes.
the show, I think maybe October, somewhere in there. And he told us about your book. And then I looked it up and I said, well, this would be a good person to have on the show. So, and I do plan to
Thank
get a
you.
copy. I was waiting for the paperback since it was close to
Right.
the paperback release. So it's in my shopping cart to
Excellent. Thank
order.
you.
Yes, to order on my next order of books. So,
Now
um,
is the book on audio yet?
It is. That's Earl.
yeah,
He did
that's
it.
what
And
Earl
Oh,
did.
that's right. You just said
yeah,
that.
and
Okay, so
he did
I
a
have to
fantastic
listen to
job.
it. Yeah, I have to listen to it on audio because I'm so busy. I have a full-time job, then I come to, and then I do the show, and then I have
Right.
the business. I can only listen to books right now. So I'm actually listening to two different books right now. Yeah, well, one day I might listen to a book, on another day I'll listen to a
Right.
different book.
Right.
So
Right.
she's looking at me, how do you listen to two books at the same time?
I mean, it's not. It's probably possible. I can't do audiobooks. I tried once. I may try again, but it just put me to sleep. I was listening and just
That's
it
my
just
problem.
it put me to
That is
sleep.
my problem.
Yeah,
That's
But
well,
my
over
that's
the
problem.
Christmas
yeah.
holidays,
It depends on your
on the
activity.
book.
I listen to
Okay,
audiobooks while I'm driving,
right.
and I
Yeah.
listen to
Yeah.
audiobooks while I'm exercising. So, like if I go
Okay,
Yeah.
take a walk, if I go to the gym, I'm listening to an
Right.
audiobook. And if things aren't too crazy at work, like let's say I'm just typing a press release or something, I can listen to
Right.
an audiobook then. But yeah, I can't just listen to it, like sit down and just listen to an audiobook.
okay. Well, maybe that's what happened because, of course, we don't want to be falling asleep behind the wheel or no,
Right.
Right.
on the treadmill. Yeah, that could be dangerous. But over the holidays, I was able to catch up on some reading that I hadn't been able to get to because when you have a busy schedule, sometimes you just can't do it. And so I
Yeah.
was really
Yeah.
able to read. I'm on the fourth book, so I was able to finish three, and I'm on the fourth book from the holidays because I did have some downtime. So I was excited about that, just being able to kind of sit, you
Yeah.
know, and
Yeah.
read.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, that was exciting. So the billionaire that oh, before I asked that about the billionaire, you said you were from the rural South. Where are you from in the rural South?
Southeastern Virginia is where I grew up, in a little town called Smithfield, Virginia. If you ever
Okay,
heard of Smithfield
you
hams.
okay. I'm from Newport News.
Oh,
So yeah, I heard
Oh,
it's
And
Smithfield.
goes to show you how small the world is. You're living
Yes.
in
that's
DC
right.
now,
I'm living in DC.
and I'm right down the street from you. I'm in Maryland.
Oh, how about that?
Yeah. Yes. I've been in Houston for a long time, but Newport News is where I grew up. I went to
That's
graduated
funny.
from Warwick High School,
Yeah,
and my
yeah,
parents, they're both passed, but they had a home in Carrollton,
yeah,
which
yeah.
which is right across the James River Bridge, like the
That's
first
right.
community you get to before you get to
Right,
Smithfield. So
right,
we grew
right.
up on Smithfield Ham and all that. Yeah. From
Excellent,
Well,
history, but
excellent.
that's great. That's really just it's a small world. So
Yeah.
in your book, The Rural South, what's the setting in your book?
It's Ham, Mississippi, and it's a totally made up town. It
Okay.
has biblical implications in the sense that in the people have used. There's no real indication in the Bible, but people have used the situation with Ham, the character in the Bible, to who has been quote um, belittled and sent down to the level of something less than all the other human beings. And so during slavery in the slave Bible, they were teaching, talking to slaves and telling them that the Bible says that they are less than and are meant to be slaves and meant to be servants of these people, which is what happened to Ham in the book. So in the Bible, so I created this town because I wanted people, if anybody came to it with that biblical thought in their mind, they would know that this is a people, these are Ham's people that supposedly have been put down and left aside and brushed aside by society. But here is, for some reason, this billionaire who's dropped into the midst of them to see what change he can bring.
That's
well,
really interesting.
this book has really hit the mark with a lot of readers. I mean, it was one of the best books of 2024. It's won some awards. Did you realize that this book would make such an impact?
I realized, well, Robert Frost, one of the sayings I love from him is if there's no tears in the writer, there are no tears in the reader. So
Mm,
this book was a very emotional experience to write for me. And I think I felt at the end when I finally finished that I had written a book that could touch people, um, that it touched me, that it changed me, that's actually changed how I view my responsibility in the world after having gone through the process of creating the book and putting it out there. So I really felt like people would be affected by it. And I can tell you one of the quotes that I love came from a woman on Goodreads that said, I have never had a fictional book strike such a call to action in my soul before. So,
Wow.
so I know from that people have been affected by it. And I just got, I think it was last week, and I love this. This came from a young African American guy. He said, thank you, Mr. Blunt, for allowing Black boys, girls, men, and women to see that financial and educational success of that magnitude is possible and that helping other people can still be a part of the story.
that's
So
beautiful.
yeah, and so the mission is happening is in when when you sit down as a writer, and you want to make a point to get people to open their eyes about something, Gwen, as you talked about with the tribe. And then when it happens, all of that time you spend alone in that room writing, it's worth it,
Mhm.
because you're making some kind of change.
Yeah. How long did it take you to write the book?
A year and a half, and I call it my pandemic baby because that's basically what I was doing.
A
I could
lot of
take my
books were birthed
time.
out of the pandemic.
I just wish I
Absolutely.
was bored during COVID. I wanted to be able to just have time to write a book. People
Well,
felt
we
like, oh, we don't
started
have to
this
go to
show
work. Let's
though.
do a million other things.
We started
Well,
this show
luckily,
in COVID though.
luckily I
We
have,
did.
yeah, I haven't. Oh, during the pandemic, you
We
started?
We
started
did.
this show
Oh,
three or 4 months into the pandemic, and it's 4 years old now. So that was something that, probably
yeah.
wouldn't have happened had the pandemic not happened.
Okay.
Because
This is true.
Yeah.
because we couldn't do the festival, we wanted the National Black Book Festival. We wanted to do something to keep the message out there about African American literature. And
Yeah.
that's
Right.
what this is. But had that not happened, we probably wouldn't have felt the need. I don't know. We may have, but not then, you
Yeah.
know. But it was
And
directly a result.
well, that's excellent. And one of the other things I wanted to do, one of the things I thought about when I was writing this book and sitting on the back porch during the pandemic was talking about culture and what kind of culture I wanted people to remember that was a part of the African American experience. When I was at NBC and a director, you would hear people on the set or reporters or people say they kept saying urban, they kept saying urban, they kept saying urban over the years to a point when urban was another word for black.
Hmm.
And
Exactly.
and
Hmm.
and I would say you can't do that because not every black person lives in the city. You know,
I live in the country.
my yeah, well, my I grew up in the country. My relatives are still farmers in the country, and so there's a whole different dynamic sometimes, a whole different experience sometimes, and and I kind of feel like it's my duty as an African American raised in the South to remind people that this is where the Great Migration came from, and this is still a part of who we all are. And these people who are living like the folks in Ham, Mississippi, unfortunately, this kind of poverty still exists. And I wanted to put a person with who had had an education, who had had contacts, who had money, who could go into a community and show them themselves and show them the
Mm,
possibility of themselves, which oftentimes the South refuses to do with African American communities.
Now,
mm.
did you name Ham like it is in the Bible with one M, or did you change the spelling at all?
No, I think it's the same. I hope it is.
Well, tell me about the experience of creating a fictional city. Did you base it on a real life city, or was this totally from your imagination? Because one thing I do like about books, like for instance, The Five People You Meet in Heaven, that was a fictional city.
Right.
And the good thing about that is you can basically create your own world.
That's right. That's right. And so as opposed to writing historical fiction, this book is just Jeffrey fiction. I just made it up. And
Mhm.
so I didn't want to focus myself on, writing this particular street or somebody might know the street or the church that I wrote about or something like that. I wanted all the focus on these people in this community. So often in that situation, in my mind, the reader will accept what I'm giving, not expecting to see that they crossed this bridge, this very famous bridge, or not expecting to hear about this particular high school or something like that. They can just accept the town as it is and what I give them, because I really wanted the focus to be on that, and nothing else. And this community that's called Around the Way. I wanted everybody to think about that. And so I created really a few sets in the book where you have
Okay.
the lane where the 22 houses are. There's a particular there's a motel that has a big place in the book and some other spots like a hospital and things where things happened. But I don't pull back far enough so that I could speak to you about, the design of the city because I wanted it something smaller or something more intimate.
Okay. Now, was this your first novel?
This is my fourth.
Oh, okay. This is your fourth novel. Okay. All right.
But the last two are the ones that I consider the books are that I began to feel myself as a writer and show the talent that I think I have, and I'm busy trying to make better all the time.
Oh,
Now, with
well,
the television career that you had, were you writing with TV? Were
Um,
you behind camera, on camera?
I was
production.
behind the camera. I was a director. So I was the director of Meet the Press. I was the director of NBC Nightly News, the first African American to direct the Today Show. I directed special events like today was Jimmy Carter's funeral in the district. Well, I directed the funeral of President Ford. I've done State of the Union addresses,
Oh.
many White House press conferences and presidential
Very
speeches and things
fulfilling.
like that.
You
Yeah,
So
it
you
was
what
a
is
get
it?
great
to
What does
you've
the
great
gotten to see a
career.
director do?
lot.
Yeah, what does the director do exactly?
Well, it's very different from a film director. So, a live television director in this situation will be if you're looking at your camera and let's say you're watching the evening news, and
Hmm.
it comes on and there's the anchor sitting behind a desk and you see the camera slowly push in. Well, the camera is slowly pushing in because the director asked for it. Think of that. We used to think of ourselves as the gatekeepers. Nothing happens on your television set for that show unless a director calls for it. So when you see the graphic change, it's a director saying change to something. If you see a tape appears because the director says roll that tape, take that tape. If you see a correspondent appear at the White House, your director will say stand by at the White House, take the White House, and that person will be there. And so
Okay.
it's a technical thing in controlling the flow of the show, and you're in charge of the look and all of that stuff. But in the news business, it's also an editorial thing. So a good friend of mine, who's a director named John Libretto, um, during a presidential debate, it was George Bush Sr. and Bill Clinton. He took a shot of he waited, he saw this thing happen first, and then he waited around because he thought it was going to happen again. He took this shot of George Bush Sr. looking at his watch in the middle of the debate, which looked like he was bored, didn't want to be there, whatever. And it is considered one of the top 10 moments in presidential debates. And it actually affected his, as he tried to go on and campaign, this followed him. It affected him. And so editorially, you do all these things too. In a show with Meet the Press, you really have to follow the show editorially to know what the guests are talking about and when the host might call for a soundbite that this guest said or a graphic or something like that. You've got to be really in there so you can get to the proper thing at the proper time. So it's a very
George
high pressure, high energy job.
George W. Bush had a lot of unfortunate photos. I think there was also a photo very famous of him writing a note to someone saying he had to go to the bathroom, and somebody over took that photo over his shoulder, and then that photo
Right,
went viral. He just
right.
had that unfortunate thing about him where he always got caught in these funny videos or these funny photos.
Now,
Uh,
did that happen to the dad or the son? Because I
that was
know
That was
that,
the dad.
yeah,
That
the
was the
dad
dad,
was the watch watching
Yeah, the
the.
dad
was the
was the
watch.
watch, but
Uh,
his
But
son
you're
was the
right.
one with the note you want saying he had to go to the bathroom.
Yes, right,
okay, that's what
right.
I
And
was.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
yeah,
knew about the
yeah,
watch, and you're right that watch. Looking at the watch, that did follow him through the
yeah.
campaign because
Mhm.
it was about him really being sort of detached
That's
from the
right.
electorate, and
That's
he
right.
Mhm.
just wasn't. It, Bill Clinton was well is, but at that time he was very personable, very
Right,
charismatic, and that
right,
wasn't George H.W. Bush's. He didn't have charisma. What he had was a lot of experience, and so
right, right.
um that. But you never know that somebody actually made a decision to capture that image.
That's
You
right.
know,
That's right.
you
Yeah,
this is my first time hearing about it. So a lot of times we think things just kind of happen, but you're saying
right.
nothing happens without that director.
That's right. And
Yeah.
so when you're in a live broadcast, whether it was, today you saw the case on bringing President Carter's remains down the street and all the different camera angles and different shots. There's a director in there saying, take that camera, asking for another shot on that camera, take that camera. All of
Oh,
those things are happening because the director is doing that. And it's the same that when if you're watching the Oscars, every time it changes a picture, um, somebody's directing. Even when you hear a person say, "And coming out on the stage to give the award for," somebody's giving that cue so
Right.
that the announcer will announce. A little boy asked me when I was speaking at an elementary school several years ago, and he wanted to know if a director was powerful. And I said to him, well, there was a time when President George W. Was going on the air to tell the world that we were going into Iraq, that we were going to go to war. And he goes into the Oval Office and he sits down. Now, he can't talk until what? And the little boy looks at me and I said, until I told him to. And the little boy said, "What?" And I said, "Yes, because we were the pool, and what we were doing was going to go around the world." He didn't know exactly when it was going to happen, so he's waiting for me to cue him. So a little boy from a farm in Smithfield, Virginia, is in a position so that he can say to the President of the United States, "Okay, Mr. President, you can talk now."
That's awesome. Well,
Well,
unfortunately, I think we've made it to the bottom of the interview. So I can see now we could have talked probably for another hour. So but I appreciate you coming on the show and sharing your story with us. Congratulations on all the
Thank
success
you.
and
that the
show
book
the
has
cover
had.
of the book one more
Yes,
time.
please do.
Okay.
Show the cover of the book. Go out and get you a copy of
Mr.
Jimmy
Jimmy around
from
from
Around
around
the
the way.
Way,
From around the way. Yeah.
and it will be out in paperback next week. But you can also get the hardcover if you would like.
You can also
That's
get
right.
the hardcover and you can get the audio
The
book.
audio book. I keep forgetting about the
That's right.
audio
And
book.
the Kindle version.
There you go.
Yeah,
Well,
and
we
the
Yeah.
did
ebook.
put your website in the chat. So everybody click that link, purchase this
Thank
book.
you.
It's a beautiful, beautiful story. And I can't wait to dive into it. In fact, I'm gonna go ahead and get my audio. My phone's right here, so I'm gonna be, oh, you can't see it, but if there it
I
is.
see it.
So I'm gonna be downloading my book. I can't wait to dive into this story. Just the layers that you described were beautiful. So thank
Yeah,
you
Uh,
for thank
thank,
you for that.
yeah.
thank you,
Ha-
Dr. Lawson. Thank you, Gwen. Appreciate
Have
it.
have a good evening and happy New
All
Year
right.
again.
Happy New Year. Take care.
Bye
You
bye.
Bye bye.
too. Bye bye.